Hi there, it's your friend Vinette, and today I am going to review all of the books that I've read in this year 2025. I have to be honest, I didn't read as much as I have planned to, because most of the time I did use my time to work on school projects, exams, and other activities. But I think that's okay, because I didn't push myself too hard to actually read books and just let things go with the flow. So yeah, I'm going to review my books today. I've actually read 6 books throughout the year, and 4 out of the 6 books that I've read actually came from the same series, and that is the Percy Jackson series by Riordan. So the Percy Jackson series, book 1 to book 4, excluding the 5th book because I haven't finished it, and that is the Lightning Thief till the Battle of the Labyrinth. I've actually finished The Lightning Thief before the year even started. However, I did reread it because I wanted to refreshen my memories before I started or began the second book. Some of you might have already heard about the Percy Jackson series, or some of you might have already watched the live action show. And some people have called this series overhyped. But I have to be honest that these books did help me a lot. The plot is very exciting and it really pulls you in to the storyline. These books really helped me to get into reading again. A year ago, I was on a reading slump, but when the live action Percy Jackson series were announced, I wanted to get back on track and I wanted to continue reading on the books. And let me tell you that I went on a non-stop reading streak. I literally read everywhere, on the bus, during school lunches, and during when the teacher was absent. That is how much the Percy Jackson series meant to me. The first time that I read The Lightning Thief, I remember that I was really captivated with the storyline and with the writing. I have gained lots of spoilers and I already knew about the main plot of the book. However, it still excited me and interested me throughout reading the book. I do have a favorite among the 4 books of this Percy Jackson series, and that is the 4th book, or The Battle of the Labyrinth. This book genuinely made my jaw drop. I was more hyped about this book rather than the other 3 books that I've read, and it is an absolute masterpiece. I loved everything about this book: the plot, the characters, the storyline, and the setting. Even the betrayals hit me personally, like I was one of the characters getting involved, and the battles were written to perfection. And that is how good this book really is. So some of you might ask, have I read the 5th book, The Last Olympian? I did start the book and I have read a few pages. However, I did not have the time to finish the book because I procrastinate a lot and I wanted to read another book. Therefore, I haven't have found the time to finish it, and hopefully early this year, in the new year's 2026, I will finish that book. So yeah, if you haven't read the Percy Jackson series, what are you doing? I recommend it highly, and therefore I gave it a 10 out of 10 review. So the 5th book that I've read this year is the Rahasia Nusantara by Asisi Suhariyanto. This is a non-fiction book, and it's like a documentary of Mr. Asisi himself and his wife exploring various of candi and temples all around Indonesia. At first, I wasn't interested in this book, but as I kept reading, it really brought many facts that I haven't known before about my own country, about Indonesia, about temples, that really somehow caught my attention. You can tell by the many annotations and notes that I made in this book, and some of them are pretty cool, and I just wrote my thoughts about the places that he visited. One of the notes that I remember till this day is about Candi Lawang. I'm going to quote from the book. Konon, Candi Lawang adalah gerbang magis atau portal untuk menuju ke kerajaan Majapahit dan masih dijaga banyak pengawal gaib Majapahit. Beredar juga mitos lain bahwa Candi Lawang adalah pintu gaib ke Laut Selatan. So that part actually caught my attention because I thought it was so cool that there is a myth here in Indonesia about a magical portal to a certain area. And it was so cool that I made this Candi Lawang as my inspiration for a school assignment. It was an assignment to write a short story about something that happened in the past. So what I love about this book that it has many facts that I haven't known about Indonesia and many facts that I haven't known about Candi, and it has lots of graphics and just tables about the things, the history about temples here in Indonesia, and I thought it was really cool and really helpful. I think this isn't a hard book to read. It's a light non-fiction book, and I totally recommend it to people who wants to learn more about Indonesia's history, know more about temples, and just loves non-fiction. I really do recommend it, and I will give it a 7.5 out of 10. The last book that I've read this year is The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. So I was actually skeptical to read this book at first because I actually took it off the shelf without reading any reviews of this book. And I do agree with people that said this book was hard to read because Joseph Conrad's writing goes way back in the day. After I finished this book, I actually had to look up and watch an analysis video about Joseph Conrad's writing, and it really helped me a lot to understand the writing better. Disclaimer to everyone that wants to read this book contains lots of racism content, and it was written back in the day in the 19th century, where I believe that some of the contents in this book was normal back in the day. However, it could offend lots of people in the present day. This book, as the title suggests, has lots of dark meanings in a gloomy way. Through the story, I was not hooked on the first two chapters. However, I was interested on the last chapter when they introduced a certain new character. However, I do not like the contents of this book very much, but it did introduce me to several new big kids vocabulary, and it really did educated me to know those new vocabulary. So I will give it a 5 out of 10. That's all the books that I've read this year, and if you do want to see more book reviews, you can follow me on Fable because I post a lot of book reviews. Bye!